It was absolute carnage in NFL Survivor polls as 44% of the players in large polls were eliminated in week 3, thanks to upsets to Jacksonville, Dallas, and Baltimore. We'll discuss it and get you ready for week 4 in NFL Survivor coming up next. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Lay.
And I'm Michael Wiley, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants. Eric, man, I don't know what to say. I think I'm just going to go straight to the stats and say nothing. We started with 135 in our survivor pool, and we've lost 74, more than half, and we're down to 61. Eric?
It's amazing to be down to 61. Now, we're not quite low enough to start listing everybody on the screen, but we got some interesting names. And in addition to me somehow still being alive, date to that late last minute change on Saturday from Jacksonville to Kansas City. However, my head is telling me to go Jacksonville. My heart is to take the safer route, Kansas City, and that is what I am going to do. But two former winners, Tony Godino and Corey McGrath, are still alive. The wild card guy I call, Jerry Dovey. This week he went Pittsburgh, and that worked as well. He still survived. And co-founder Gary Kurtzman's son, Hayden Kurtzman, he's also going rogue. He was the only one to pick Detroit over the New York Jets, and he's still alive. So lot to watch. We're going to be tracking this poll to the bitter end. If you got eliminated, please stay with us, watch the shows, still participate in the comment section. We're going to have a lot of fun as we go down the list.
Real quick, I think we need to talk about that Jaguars game since we're not going to talk about it otherwise. I'm involved in the university here, Utah Tech. And one of the things that really surprises me, especially at the professional level, you see at the college level and certainly at the high school level, is just the ability for teams to have mental breakdowns. And I think we saw that with Jacksonville. Just really disappointing. And I'm sure frustrating for those who picked the Jaguars this last week.
And surprising, right? So I switched off Jacksonville, not because I thought Jacksonville was going to lose. I just felt that it wasn't worth the risk in the incremental future value. I still thought Jacksonville was going to win, especially since Houston was so injured, and we saw how their secondary was so poor. And you already talked about the offensive line, and it's just inexcusable to me that the Jacksonville Jaguars weren't able to take advantage. I get it; there were fluke plays, right? They had a block kick, they had a fullback run a kickoff return for a touchdown. But they still need to be better. Any given Sunday, I think, is the big lesson. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the games for week 4. And there's 7 games that we think you should at least be considering, leading off with the San Francisco 49ers. They are 2 touchdown favorites at home against the Arizona Cardinals. Kansas City, 9.5-point favorites at the New York Jets. The Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles are both at home, and they're both touchdown favorites over New England and Washington, respectively. And then we have 3 games that are shorter spreads, but teams that have less future value. The LA Chargers are 4.5-point favorites at home against your Las Vegas Raiders, Michael Wiley. And then 2 3.5-point favorite teams on the road, Denver and Minnesota, at Chicago, and at Carolina. Okay, so let's start with these 2 3.5-point favorites, Denver and Minnesota. I'm going to start talking about Denver, Michael. I feel like a used car salesman. I got a survivor pick for you, Michael. It's in the back. It's a team that hasn't won this year. It's a team that lost by 50 points last week. It's a team that is on the road. Why not put your whole survivor life on them? Denver. Look, I think Chicago is the worst team in the NFL. That's my new pronouncement after 3 weeks. But I'm not picking Denver. I cannot do it. What do you think about this game?
Yeah. No, I mean, really disappointing what happened in Miami to Denver this last week. They had no answer No answer. Could have been worse than 70 points, by the way. A really phenomenal Miami offense, including their second string offense.
Without Miami having one of their best players in Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, Jalen Waddle being the concussion protocol. I mean, again, you can't take away from the Miami Dolphins, really impressive right now. But Sean Payton was supposed to come in and make some changes that fix things here in Denver. And while I think I'm totally with you that the Chicago Bears are the worst team, and some people say that their loss was more embarrassing than Denver loss. I'm not sure how that's actually true. I wouldn't touch this game because Denver has to prove to me before I pick them against anyone that they're going to win, more than a game or two this season. So it's kind of scary picking them right now.
Yeah, I'll say some people may be enticed because Denver has almost no future value. I'd say they have no current value. So no thanks, Michael. Minnesota, there's also 3.5-point favorites at Carolina.
It's in Carolina. Their defense is, pretty strong. I feel like Minnesota hasn't really proven themselves yet. So I don't even know why they're 3.5-point favorites.
Well, I'm going to slightly go the other way, just slightly, in the fact that, look, I was the biggest critic of Minnesota last year. I thought that their record was way overblown because they barely won all these close games and got blown out in the games that they lost. Well, karma is something else because it's flipped. They've been in every game this year. They've lost 3, 4, and 6. Now, am I saying Minnesota is a great team? No. But when I compare the other winless teams, I actually have a lot of respect for Minnesota. So in the eye of the blind, the one-eyed king is king, or something like that. Regardless, if I had to pick only between Denver and Minnesota as a pick, I like this Minnesota pick a lot more. Let's move on to the LA Chargers against your Las Vegas Raiders. 4.5-point favorites. The Chargers are in LA.
So if you watch the Raiders game, you might have saw some good things happen out of the defense. And obviously, if you're a Devontae Adams owner in your fantasy league, you're really excited about what he was able to do. But otherwise, the offense has completely looked lost. What happened to the running back? I mean, like, he had such a good year last year, both in terms of touches and what he did with those touches. The Raiders offense looks in disarray to me. I think the Chargers should be able to take advantage of that. And so the Chargers should win this game, but I'll end with where you started. Brandon Staley scares me. He really does. I'm not quite sure why he's putting his coaching life on the line so many weeks in a row, week in and week out. I think the Mike Williams loss is going to be a big one, and who knows if Eckler's going to be back. And for that reason, and also for the reason that this is a bit of a rivalry game, I'm going to stay away from this one.
Everything you said, I'm not going to repeat all the good points you made, but I will say that in Survivor, you have to look to future value. You have to start planning what you're going to do. And remember what I said earlier, I think the Chicago Bears are the worst team in football. So you should actually look at Chicago's remaining schedule and say, who plays them? Guess who plays them? The LA Chargers in LA in week 8. A very good game in which to utilize the LA Chargers, in my humble opinion. So I am going to wait on the Chargers. So let's move on. There are only 4 more games that we need to take a peek at. Let's look at these next 2 together. Both of them are touchdown favorites. Philadelphia 7 over Washington, and the Dallas Cowboys 7 over New England. Between the 2, the one that I find most intriguing is Philadelphia over Washington. That is the route that I would go, and might actually be the route of all the games we've talked about so far. Look, Washington is a fraud. They were 2-0, but guess who they beat? They beat Denver. We saw how good Denver has been. Arizona and Denver. Whoop-de-doo. And then they just got destroyed by Buffalo. I'm really confident in a Philadelphia win. And one thing that I always like to say is look at the present value of future value. in Philadelphia, although they have a lot of future value, it's at the way part of the end of the season, and be careful that they don't potentially wrap up this division. I mean, the Giants are really bad. I just criticized Washington, and who knows what's going on with Dallas after this past week. They could wrap up the division, and the only question is, do they need to play for that bye? So be careful about saving them for two later, but still they have some tremendous games in the last 3 weeks of the season. So I do like this pick, though, other than the future value loss.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this Eagles team, all the way around, is just complete. And yeah, they had some injuries in the defensive backfield that they didn't show up. I mean, you can say that some of that may be Tampa Bay's inability to exploit them, but the Eagles looked dominant kind of from start to finish throughout that game. I really like Nick Sirianni. I think he's great, a great coach. The only thing I'll say here is coming off a short week, but it's not that short. I agree. Commanders are a fraud. They looked horrible on the offensive side. They could do nothing against Buffalo. To me, of the games we've talked about, this is the first one I feel really good about, including the Cowboys game. Just and partly because of New England, I feel like the Cowboys, obviously, what a disappointment this last game was. Kind of similar conversation to the Jacksonville game, and I'm sure really frustrating to those who picked the Cowboys this week. Their defense had looked so good. They were not very effective against Arizona. Part of that's Prescott and the offense, and having to play. I don't think that they'll necessarily have to do that this week. I think the Cowboys should be back where we without them to be on defense. But, Bill Belichick continues to be the cream of the crop at the coaching spot. And even though they're, struggling this season, they're going to continue to give teams games. And do you really want it to come down to, last minute with Dak Prescott at the helm? I don't. And so the only game so far we talked about that's interesting to me is this Eagles game.
I don't understand the spread. And I'm not a big Patriots truther, but the Patriots are not a bad team. This is not one of the teams that you want to pick against. And after that performance by Dallas, and how much of an effect, Michael, do you think that Trayvon Diggs, not to have a superstar like that, he's out for the year, played into that particular loss?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that's a big deal. That's a real big deal. So let's just avoid this game altogether.
In addition to that, I will have to see how their offensive line looks. They had 3 members of their offensive line. 2 of them were a late scratch right before the game. So we say watch late breaking news, but you didn't know about it until after the morning games already started. So you likely wouldn't have been able to shift your pick away from Dallas at the last second. I guess for me, the thing about Dallas is they still have some significant future value. There are at least 4 games in which I am more confident in than this, and maybe they can figure out their offensive woes, right? And when I say offensive woes, the Cowboys did not have problems moving the ball against Arizona. They moved it up and down the field. The problem was in the red zone, because once they got into the red zone, I think they got into the red zone 5 times and only got 1 touchdown. I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that and have great success in this league against most teams. So I'm gonna wait on Dallas here. Hopefully they can fix their woes. So that just leaves 2 games, Michael. We've got Kansas City and San Francisco. We'll talk about Kansas City. 9.5-point favorites against the New York Jets. Can I take just a moment, to say how much I've enjoyed this Survivor year? Not because I'm some genius and I've picked 3 games right, but I've picked 3 games in which have been no stress whatsoever. Now, I also burned 3 very good teams, might I add, but I enjoyed the fact of watching the Kansas City game in Chicago and knowing 5 minutes into the game that there was no chance that Chicago was going to pull off the upset. The New York Jets are not Chicago. I don't understand this line. I do not. I really don't. 9.5-point favorites. There's no one that's more critical than me of Zach Wilson. but Zach Wilson led Jets beat the Buffalo Bills earlier this year. This is in New York. Please talk me out of this. I actually have some concern. I'm like, I feel more comfortable with Philadelphia winning this week than Kansas City winning this week. What do you think?
Well, I think that this spread has everything to do with the haters of Zach Wilson. And I don't disagree with it. I mean, you have Joe Namath calling for his trade. I actually wonder if he'll make it as a starting quarterback this week, but what's the next option, and who are they going to get? You're right. Like, the Jets defense can keep them in games, and they have been keeping them in games. Even with Zach Wilson not having the ability to make decisions, it's a little bit of a defense of him. And their inability to, and just the tough luck that they have had. So I think this is mostly to do with Kansas City being considered cream of the crop and the Jets having Zach Wilson at the helm. I do think that Kansas City is going to win this game. And if you picked the Niners last week and you therefore probably have Kansas City left, I can understand why you would go with this pick. I think I feel slightly better about the Eagles pick, but I feel pretty confident. But I have felt confident about other games, so I guess I should be careful what I say. But I feel very confident that Kansas City should win this game. But it could be a close game. And any NFL game that's close, when you're playing up against a good defense, is scary. So yeah, I agree with this line. I don't think I would bet the line for the Jets, but I agree with you that the line feels a little bit high because I have the Niners available. This is an easy pick for me, but if I had to pick between the Eagles and Kansas City, it would be tough for me. I'd be watching really closely what the Jets are deciding to do. They have not been able to get Breece Hall going, but guess what? If he gets going, and Kansas City has historically not been good against the run, it could be different. This could be a different game. Kansas City defense has looked better this year than in years past, but it's early. I'm so thankful I have the Niners available to me.
Well, just not a happenstance. This is something we've talked about for 2-3 weeks, that to save the San Francisco 49ers for this particular week. Why? It's not just that this is San Francisco's best game for the rest of the year. It's the fact that we look at how confident we are the Niners are going to win versus everyone else that week relative to any past week or any future week. This is the week. Now, some of you may be saying, but Eric, but Michael, you said that against Arizona last week with Dallas, and look, they beat Dallas. Aren't you worried that Arizona may upset the Niners? Michael, let me give you my worried face. I'm not worried. I promised you guys last week that I was going to pick the Niners. I'm going to be at the Niner game. It will not be necessary. But if I have to intervene because the Niners, Arizona looks like they're going to pull off an upset, I'm not above that. But you already told me you weren't going to bail me out. But Jesse in the comment section said he has my back, so I'm not worried.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, in a way, those of you who are going to pick the Niners this week, the Cowboys did you a favor by losing to Arizona so that San Francisco doesn't take this game easily. I don't think they would have anyways, but this game is in San Francisco, or Santa Clara to be exact. And it's, it's not going to be the same atmosphere. This Niners team, I talked about the Eagles and how they look so well-rounded. This Niners team is the most well-rounded team right now in football. A lot of people have them as their number one team for not only getting to the Super Bowl, but winning it. I understand completely. Obviously, that could change with an injury, but even with an injury here or there, this team's going to continue to win games like this where they should win handily. It's not the Jaguars against Houston. It's not Dallas even, who doesn't have an offense that sometimes can come back. This team can score on offense. I think Ayuk's is supposed to be back. They can stop anyone on defense. They're so impressive. This is, to me, the pick to go with this week.
Yeah, and I like to try to make sure people we're giving both sides, right? So some people like to look, yeah, what about the Niners' future value? My response to that is this is the best game. The next best game is probably when they host, when they have to go to at Arizona at the end of the year. I know Joshua Dobbs looked good for 1 week, but they're better with Kyler Murray, and I expect Kyler Murray will be back in that game. And you just don't know where the Niners will be at that point, both in their interest level as far as what they've clinched and in their health. I think now's the time to burn the Niners. The other side of it is you're going to see huge pick popularity. And I understand someone said, I don't want to pick a pick that could be 50% of the people or more are picking San Francisco. And I get that, but I'm so much more confident. Any team could beat any team. I'm throwing that out there, of course. But I'm so much more confident in the Niners winning this week relative to anyone else winning this week. I'm going to ignore the pick popularity issue. And then to respond on the Dallas comment that I posed, that what about Dallas? You named a couple of points. I'll just say Dallas has real problems in the red zone. The Niners don't have those problems. I think they're going to punch the ball in with all those offensive weapons. And I don't know, you saw how many big runs that Arizona got on Dallas with their speed guys. Do you see any chance of that happening on the Niner defense?
No, I don't. And part of that was Joshua Dobbs. And I think that, again, to some extent, the Cowboys did the Niners, those picking the Niners this week, a favor. They got to see some of those things happen this last week, and the Niners will be prepared more than Dallas was. I'll say one thing also about Mike Martz. I think him, calling the offensive play calling is affecting the Cowboys. And so that's something else they need to get right. That's not what's happening for the Niners. They don't have that situation. They have strong offense and defensive coordinators. I feel like this Niners team is well put together.
As if there wasn't another reason to pick the Niners over Arizona. The Niners played last week on Thursday, so they've got that extra rest. How big do you think that when you were the team that played the last game on Thursday, and the other team did not, how big effect do you think that is?
I think it's a couple of things. One is you probably are watching the game real time, so they probably watch that Cardinals Cowboys game real time. And I'll tell you, health in the NFL, as we're seeing unfortunately play out week in and week out, is such a big deal. Every single day matters. This Niners team is going to be as healthy as can be with that long rest. I think it makes a big difference. Good point.
All right, folks. It's been a fun, amazing, crazy, just 3 or 4 weeks here in the NFL with Survivor. Guys, let's hear what your thoughts are in the comment section. Either debriefing about the crazy week 3 or let us know what you're thinking for week 4. Until next time, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I'll put on the screen 2 videos we think that you'll enjoy.